So history has been scripted at the North Lawns of the UN headquarters in the New York City in the United States of America, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi led the world in the celebration of the 9th International Yoga Day, and a Guinness World Record has also been created for the maximum number of nationalities participating in a yoga session. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi was accompanied by the President of the 77th UNGA and the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations. He in fact was performing yoga there at the North Lawns, accompanied by people from different nationalities around the world. And Richard Gere, the famous Hollywood actor, was also there. And he had
next to the Prime
absolutely,
Minister.
and the Prime Minister did deliver a very exhilarating address at the UN headquarters.
Right. We are joined once again, as we did say earlier, that William will join us once again after the event is over. So, William, you're back with us. You witnessed the marquee event. What's your takeaway? What's your reaction?
Yeah, witnessed the marquee event, as you said, and witnessed a little bit of history as well. Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister, said that 9 years ago he was here at the United Nations to try and persuade member states to recognise June 21st, the summer solstice, as International Yoga Day. 175 nations back then essentially agreed to that proposal and did adopt the UN resolution. And we can see 9 years later that resolution being played out in real time right in front of us on the North Lawn of the United Nations, with that record number of different nationalities participating in a yoga session. So a little bit of history here at the United Nations on a day where essentially the message is very much of unity, of togetherness. In his address, the Prime Minister said that those were key tenets of yoga. He said that it is a practice that is an ancient tradition, but it is still living, it is still thriving around the world. It helps connect people with nature as well as yourself internally and with others. Those were a few of the key tenets that the Prime Minister stated during his address here at the UN.
Right, William, the Prime Minister also said that the yoga is living and dynamic. It is free from copyright, from patents and royalty payments. So India has been very large-hearted and magnanimous. Right, we'll be going live in just a bit. Right, this is Prime Minister Narendra Modi being felicitated at the UN headquarters by India's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ruchira Kamboj. India has created a Guinness World Record for the maximum number of nationalities in that celebration, led by Prime Minister of India Narendra Modi at the North Lawns of the UN headquarters. What a day, and should I say what a morning it's been.
William can also talk us through a little bit of this, because you were talking about the world record, the Guinness World Record, which has now just been handed over. That plaque has been handed over to Prime Minister in the presence of the UN General Assembly's President and of course the Indian Permanent Representative. So I mean, the most number of nationalities at a single yoga event. What did the crowd look like for you? William?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the event started, it is just about 9 a.m. local time. The event started just after 8 a.m. so people were queuing up outside the UN as early as an hour before that to try and get into this. And it was a rather chilly morning here in New York, but that really showed the dedication of many people, members of the public that applied to come to this event, or UN delegates, to try and be a part of this record-breaking event. Of course, people didn't know that this kind of record would be broken going into it, but that's certainly a nice surprise, but really showed just the excitement about the event. And as you can see, people are starting to clear the North Lawn, but people had been bracing some of the weather. There are a few flying yoga mats because of the heavy winds we've seen here over the past couple of hours, but people were excited to be a part of it.
Right, William, just hold your thoughts. We are showing a rare photo opportunity which is happening there at the UN headquarters. Prime Minister mingling with children of all different nationalities who also participated in the yoga session. William, there's always a personal touch that we see in events involving Prime Minister of India with the community. And here we saw another glimpse of that. The Prime Minister chose to have children of different nationalities on stage just after he received the plaque showing that a world record has been created.
Absolutely, of course, a little bit of history being made, and you mentioned that human touch, and that was a real key message we heard from the Prime Minister speaking before the yoga session got underway, the fact that it's not a commercialized activity. You don't necessarily need to go to a yoga studio to participate in the activity. You don't need a teacher. You can be self-taught, or you can choose to have a mentor if you wish. So it's really that point that yoga can be for everyone. It's about connectivity, and it wasn't just the Prime Minister that made that point. The message from New York City's Mayor Eric Adams was very much touching on that. He said that he hoped that the mindfulness created by yoga can not just be seen on the mat, but can then be extended onto the streets. He hoped that some of those tenets from yoga can then be used in the community. People can be kinder to each other, more thoughtful to each other going forward. Again, that was a point made by the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. He couldn't be here in person, but he did leave a video message where he said that it helps really the world connect to the planet, as well to connect to ourselves because of the body of yoga. So that message of connection was absolutely crucial and really transcended through the addresses given here at the UN today.
Right. Also, William, the point that I was making earlier, that the Prime Minister said that yoga is free from copyright patents and royalty payments. So India has been quite magnanimous, isn't it, in its bid to take its ancient spiritual practice to different parts of the world and to popularize it. And there are so many health benefits which obviously cannot be counted, because you don't know how many people did not fall ill or how many people bettered themselves over time because of adoption of yoga. But you are looking at numbers increasing, and that is there in the statistics all around. So any other country perhaps would not have had that approach, isn't it?
Absolutely. Of course, we saw 9 years ago when Narendra Modi decided to take this proposal to the United Nations, try and convince nations around the world to mark it as an international day of celebration. Of course, that's no easy feat. It's not just anything that gets registered as such a significant event to see an international resolution passed here at the United Nations. And of course, 175 nations signed up to that tenet, which showed that even nearly a decade ago there was that willingness to see yoga as being internationally beneficial, regardless of where you're from. That message from India's delegation back then was to the world that this is something that can promote good, it can promote wellness, it can promote connectivity internally and amongst communities as well. Nearly a decade on, we're seeing that very much playing out. Of course, a record-breaking number of nationalities gathering together for a single yoga session, which is really the embodiment of the United Nations. Of course, nations coming together under one roof, in the case of the General Assembly or here, over a number of mats, but with the common purpose of sharing a yoga session.
Right, and towards the end, William, the Prime Minister spoke about how there are studies that are going on, in fact, for scientific validation of yoga and different aspects of yoga. A lot of the studies are taking place in India as well. Soon we'll be joined by the professor with the All India Institute of Medical Sciences here in Delhi. A lot of work is happening on the front of scientific validation of different aspects of yoga. Anything that you can tell us about what is happening in the US very briefly on this?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, plenty of studies going on all the time, but it's really seen as a growing trend, and more people are being turned towards yoga if they've got aches and pains or more serious ailments. And that is a huge reason why we're seeing popularity for yoga, not just across certain demographics or in certain parts of the country, but really universal. People are recognizing the benefits, whether it's a little bit of an internal escape to connect with yourself a little bit better, or whether you've got any aches and pains that you want to address. More and more people are being turned on to the idea that yoga could help them, whether in a small or significant way, in their daily lives.
Well, thanks a lot, William. Thank you for being with us and, at the marquee event and giving us, an update from right there and giving us a feel of what people thought of as well. Now we are joined by a few experts. Munmun, do you want to introduce them?
Yes, Dr. K.K. Deepak, former professor and head department of physiology, AIIMS, is with us, and so is Dr. Hansaji Yogendra. She is the director of the Yoga Institute in Mumbai. Such a pleasure to have you. And of course, Ambassador Chandramohan Bhandari, former Indian diplomat, and he's been the yoga ambassador for ICCR. He is a yoga guru, quite renowned at that. Such a pleasure to have the three of you here on DD India. You've been waiting for a very long time. You've been seeing the session at the UN headquarters. Dr. Hansaji, what are your thoughts on this occasion?
Well, it's lovely to watch and how yoga is taken so nicely all over the world. And it is totally an effort of Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi. We were there since last 104 years here. But once government takes it in the hand, then things go very nicely to all over. We were also getting foreigners coming from all over, but there were 20, 30, different countries. Now varieties of people come, and so it is definitely lovely, very much heartwarming to see the way in which yoga is progressing.
Ambassador Bhandari, your thoughts on this occasion? India has created history. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. It has been such a joy to see the UN headquarters, like vibrating with yoga, philosophy, yoga, spirit. And why yoga such popularity? Primarily because the environment in which now human body is living has changed in the last 50 years so drastically that today human body is finding itself very difficult to stay in normal good health. And yoga and Ayurveda together, these are the two sciences that actually bring this body science into play. And so if individuals have this knowledge, then they can enjoy a very sound physical health, at the same time sound mental balance and creativity at the spiritual level. And this is what, in my personal experiences worldwide traveling and interacting, I find that this realization that thinking process is the most critical process within this body, which is not done by the body but by the owner of the body. So the moment we go to the little deeper insight into the yoga field, then we realize that it's a very empowering time for holistic health and wellness of each individual, irrespective of nationality, religion, or whatever.
Well, Dr. Deepak, what is your reaction to what you saw, the whole event? And also, if you could tell us a little bit about how yoga helps in the process of healing, probably faster. You're a professor of physiology.
So, I see it's an exciting day today when we are celebrating 9th International Day of Yoga. And I've seen this part of world for over 30 plus years, and AIIMS has been doing research for over 50 years. So I've seen those, how much research is being done, how it's being supported. But this is overwhelming response in the last 9 years when the state has come up and to help us. And the amount of the research being done to investigate the disease and also the health is enormous. It's mind-boggling the amount of the research is being done. At AIIMS itself, nearly about 100 projects, and these have been done. The last International Yoga Day, we called how many research being done. We could count 95 research projects being done in disease and health scenario, mostly in disease scenario. So it's very pertinent question, because you can improve health, mental health, physical health, physiology of human body. Perfect. You can make more fitness. You can have more fit, so that's why it has come into a part of the Fitness India program. So it's a wonderful, and the equation that if you are more fit, you will be less ill is also correct. So if you maintain your health and your nutrition and your mental status, you will not fall sick. So that statement goes without failing, so you will be less. Now the pertinent question, is there evidence for improvement in disease scenario? So yes, we have carried out a multicentric trial, at least on people who had a heart attack. We are currently carrying out a trial on heart failure. Before that, we have conducted a randomized controlled trial on bronchial asthma, and we have published them. The AIMS has published them, and several other people on GIT disorder and public GIT disorders like inflammatory bowel syndrome and other anxiety disorders, personality things, and also other diseases. So there evidence is coming up. Now we should look at that 9 years or even 50 years is much less to develop a science of that nature, if you consider allopathy or otherwise. So we think we should go for more and more data collection, more randomized controlled trial, more meta-analysis. But evidence is clinching. It's coming up, and we are publishing it.
Dr. Hansa Yogendra, in terms of institutional support to try and take yoga across the world, that's what the International Day of Yoga also is all about. You know, I mean, to what extent is this growing? I mean, and institutions coming up across the world, you know, which can be linked and sort of share knowledge and best practices.
Well, slowly people are coming, because this 3 years period was something which really stopped everybody, the corona point. Now slowly things are opening up. Still certain countries, people don't want to come to India. They think that in India things are not so safe. People have very funny notions about India and Indian people. Whatever it is, slowly people are opening up. Right now we had a whole British group coming to us saying that we want to learn authentic yoga now, which was very interesting, because all this yoga, what you are watching is, everybody is doing their postures, asanas, physical activity. So it is more an external yoga they are talking about. But when we talk about sickness, diseases, problems, yoga can solve, you know, can help any type of human problems, any type. Now, even if there is a fracture, suppose person has a fracture, okay, now yoga can still keep that person positive and enthusiastic, and okay, I have fracture only in my one leg, my another leg is free, my hands are fine, my breathing can go well, and I can still think better. And so that psychology part,
yes,
yoga deals a lot with. We at the Institute try and teach psychology of human life, philosophy of human life, and this technology which you are seeing. Technology has become very popular, but psychology, philosophy has to be brought out nicely. People suffer more at mental level, not at physical level so much. Our body is quite self-sufficient. Body can handle its problems very easily, unless it is very gross. But mind, when it interferes, when mind goes negative, problems come. So Ayurveda definitely talks about ahar, food, vihar, rest, recreation, achar, routines. But then yoga goes further than that. Yoga talks about vichar, how mind works, how mind is supposed to work. So when mind is positive, mind is happy, healthy, then things get corrected in our body much faster, and we become healthier in any case.
Okay.
So with this, we are getting people now. Brazilians have come to us now recently, Britishers have come, Germans have come, we have French people who have come. Recently, these are 4 or 5. Of course, Dubai and such people also want us to do something more.
right.
But and even Hong Kong is coming to us very much strongly. People are coming, but it will take still, I think so, 6 months for people to really normalize. once things are opened, then more and more people are going to come, that I'm sure.
Right, Dr. Hansaji, I understand you have to leave us, so thank you so much for joining in and appreciate your patience. Ambassador Bhandari, please stay with us. And also,
Deepak, please, yes,
Dr.
also.
Deepak, please stay with us. We'll just take a quick update from Washington, D.C. and come back to you. So let's now go across to Kate Fisher, who's joining us from Washington, D.C. Good morning to you, Kate, there. What sort of a morning has it been in D.C., in New York? All the action was concentrated. Tell us about the International Yoga Day celebrations in the capital of the United States of America.
Well, obviously we weren't lucky enough to have Prime Minister Modi here himself to lead a yoga session, but across the city groups have been doing just that. The Indian Embassy, of course, doing their own session and providing breakfast for all the yogis afterwards. The weather in Washington, D.C. has not been playing ball this morning. There were a lot of outdoor yoga sessions planned, one on the National Mall just in front of the White House. That may have suffered from the weather, but certainly across yoga studios, outdoor events, the Indian Embassy, lots and lots of yoga sessions happening today in the name of International Yoga Day.
So, of course, the action is going to shift now to Washington later today, Kate, and so, perhaps you can give us a sense of anticipation as, what to be expecting today, later on in the day for the Prime Minister in Washington, D.C.
Absolutely. He's due to arrive here this evening, where he'll be welcomed at the White House. And he will be going for a dinner with President Biden. That will be closed to the press, so a private dinner will give them a chance to, get to know each other a little bit better than they already do ahead of tomorrow, Thursday, which is the big ceremonial state reception at the White House. Prime Minister Modi also speaking at the US Congress, and there will be a lavish state dinner in the evening in his honor. So lots ahead here in Washington, and I've been speaking to Indian Americans around the city in the last week or so. Everybody very excited, a real sense of occasion about this, very proud that Mr. Modi is coming as just the third Indian Prime Minister to receive this state reception honour, and a lot of excitement about what potential there is for a stronger relationship between the US and India. Obviously, these Indian Americans, either born in India and chose to move to the US, or are second generation Indian Americans, feel really strongly about how much a stronger relationship between the two countries can benefit both of them.
Right, and that was about the White House and broadly speaking about the relationship between India and the US. But there will be a lot of action at the Capitol Hill as well. Prime Minister will be delivering his second address in around 6-7 years. The last one was in 2016 to the US Congress. Have you heard personally from any of the US congressmen? In the social media, though, there have been welcome statements, and we are aware of the bipartisan support that is there for India-US ties there in the US Congress. We've seen that in terms of action as well. For instance, the support that they gave on the Indo-US nuclear deal. So have you heard personally from any of them?
I have actually spoken to a few Indian American members of Congress at an event here in Washington a week or so ago, and you're right, there is a palpable sense of excitement about Mr. Modi's arrival here and his address to Congress. They're all really energized by this move from the Biden administration to really embrace India wholeheartedly. And you're right, it is bipartisan as well. It's not just Indian American members of Congress. I think one of the few things that politicians in this city agree on is the concern they have for the rise of China, and they all understand the importance of India for the US in trying to combat that rise in aggression from the Chinese. So that will garner a lot of support for Prime Minister Modi. But in terms of the Indian American members of Congress that I actually spoke to, there was this widespread excitement about his arrival, and also Sri Thanadar, one of the ones I spoke to, said he hoped that this would mark a development in the relationship between the US and India, trying to suggest that India shift from its position of non-alignment and for the US and India to put more trust in each other and to really further relationships, not just politically, but also people-to-people relationships, cultural, business relationships, educational institutions. There were some concerns as well, though, about potential accusations of democratic backsliding in human rights issues. Raja Krishnamurthy saying that he hoped that that would be discussed when Mr. Modi meets Mr. Biden, and also Pramila Jayapal saying that she hopes that Mr. Modi understands his responsibility as leader of such a great country to protect the rights for everyone in India, regardless of their religion, their LGBTQ, and the freedom of the press.
Okay, Kate, I've also spoken to Sri Thanedar, and he will be accompanying Prime Minister Narendra Modi to the US Congress to deliver his second address to the Congress. But what's the buzz on expectations as far as substantive outcomes are concerned from the visit?
Well, unlike some state visits where it's all about the ceremony, we are told by the White House, by the Biden administration, that they do expect tangible deliverables from Mr. Modi's visit. John Kirby, spokesperson for the White House on foreign policy, saying just that to reporters. Things that we can look for, particularly cooperation on defence technology. That's something that India has been asking for some time. Mr. Biden is saying that must push forward at a rapid rate, as well as cooperation and collaboration on semiconductor production. The talk about training Indians to make semiconductors, investment in India on that, making semiconductor supply chains run better. A big issue for that. Also AI, 5G, 6G, so a lot on technology, but also militarily. There is talk of whether a drone sale will finally go through of US-made drones to India, and John Kirby also saying that cooperation on global health in the wake of the COVID pandemic, and much stronger people-to-people relations. He was also making the point that in order for this relationship to develop and continue, it's really important that the two countries invest in the relationships between their people, because ultimately that is what will keep the relationship strong in the years to follow.
Indeed, Kate, also, from the point of view of business, the relationship has grown substantially over the last few years, despite there not being, a proper business deal or a trade deal between the two countries. And there's huge potential because it's now at about $190+ billion, but the US is trading at $500 billion with much smaller countries than India. So, I mean, there's large potential upside on this, and in that context, I mean, from the CEOs and the business leaders and those points, what have they been saying? What are they hoping to get out of this visit?
Yeah, business is a huge part of this. We've already had Secretary of State Antony Blinken addressing the US-India Business Council just a week ago, talking about just that, the importance and the huge potential that remains for business ties between the two countries. And Mr. Modi already today in New York will be meeting many members of the business community. He's already met Elon Musk, the chief exec of Twitter, and one of the richest men in the world. So it's clear that this is a really big part of the trip for Mr. Modi and for the White House. President Biden often talks about making things in America and trying to create more jobs here in the US, but the White House has said that on things like semiconductors and climate change, they really want to invest in Indian companies as well. So right. There is a lot of potential for investment from the US to head into India, and it will only strengthen the ties between the two countries.
Kate Fisher, thanks very much for joining us from Washington, D.C. and, giving us an idea of what is expected. The Prime Minister is heading right there. Now, moving on to our next program, or in fact, let's get back to our guests. We have with us Dr. Deepak, former professor and head of the Department of Physiology at AIIMS, and Dr. PM Bhandari is a yoga guru and former diplomat. In fact, he was India's first yoga ambassador, if I'm not mistaken. Right. So, Dr. Bhandari, you know, I mean, when we look at this yoga event, to what extent do you see it as, you know, a step in a direction that we've already set in motion, and you know, something that's going to continue to grow and become a part of our foreign policy, in a sense that every year we keep talking about International Day of Yoga, but maybe over time, I mean, it is part of everyday foreign policy.
Absolutely. Because these days, I think our Prime Minister is the best model that our leaders, if they are practicing yogis, then really they can deliver so well. And that's the message I get out of this, even this morning, or say an hour back in New York, where 180 nationalities were present in that gathering. And yoga has been actually in practice for several decades. I remember in 2018, I was in Toronto and I was doing my first book on yoga. And at that time, the Times magazine had come out with a front page story on yoga. And at that time, it was reporting that 15 million Americans practice yoga in one day or the other. So gradually now, as our living situations, we are more or less living in virtual worlds, virtual spaces, virtual climate. So we aren't really in harmony with nature. And that's why they have such, disease, this complex diseases which are continuously increasing. And I can say from my personal experience that I have stayed myself away from all these virtual spaces, and I still continue to stay in natural spaces, to work naturally, and have a very natural lifestyle. And happily, I enjoy complete physical health so far, 75 years, and no issues whatsoever. And similarly, the mental health. So I think this morning I was impressed that the Secretary General's message, the President of General Assembly message, they focused more on yam and niyam. And this yam and niyam part of they talk of ethics and morality. So really, we are looking at the physical health, body health, which yoga can ensure, and I'm saying this with my personal experience in the last now nearly 15 years that I am completely into yoga practice and sharing it with people who are actually struggling with their health issues. And very simply making people aware what is the purpose of breathing, how breathing is actually engineering the complete metabolism in our body, what is nervous system, what is prana flow, and how my own thought process, positivity about health, and that positivity can only come from proper knowledge, the right knowledge. So this is how I see that this particular aspect of health, and I think the past 3 years of COVID has brought it very clear that if India did not suffer the way many other countries, besides our vaccine, etc., I will say that in India still the lifestyle in rural India, which is maybe 60%, they were more or less quarantined from the COVID scare.
Yes.
So therefore, when we look at this, then definitely this yoga path is definitely going to be a major,
yes.
I think not commodity, but the knowledge that we can share, and already the whole world is into it.
Right.
Ambassador Bhandari, having seen you on previous International Yoga Days, I'm sure you practiced yoga while the session was on. You are sitting in the yoga asana posture. For the viewers, if you could tell us some exercise, if you could demonstrate for instant relief from stress, it will be great on such a historic day.
Yes, thank you very much for asking me. I have seen people who are struggling when I look at them. Just 2 days back, a gentleman came and he was having both arms numb and both legs numb. And he was complaining that he had had, 3 months of lot of medication and yet no result. And I only saw that his breathing wasn't sufficient. And I just introduced this abdominal breathing to him. So as I do this, pull my tummy in and a deep breath out. And so I call it pump breathing. Our abdominal flexibility is like a pump. A newly delivered baby is using only abdominal pumping for deeper breathing. And this breathing within seconds brings the nervous, the brain, it immediately enlivens the brain and the brain enlivens the body. So what this breathing does, it immediately starts the prana flow in the body, so the brain connectivity is restored. This blood, extra blood is coming into the blood through lungs, going into the blood, and the blood temperature is increasing because this fresh air actually fires the fire in the blood. So this increased intensity of fire in the blood starts, dealing with whatever is the issue wherever in the body. And this is how this gentleman, within, like 10-15 minutes, especially when I gave him additionally those Marma points from Ayurveda, he was amazed that he already, his pain had completely gone and he felt alive. So this is how we need to go to the deeper aspect of, I think, our physical health, which is the physical exercises are primarily handling our joints, so the mobility and especially the spine's flexibility. So the second focus in my practice is on spine flexibility because the entire nervous system is passing through the spine, and therefore in the physical yoga you will see that whether it's the Surya Namaskar, whether it's the Bhujanga, the Cobra posture, majority of postures the focus is on the spinal correction. So the moment we do spinal correction, breath correction, and heart correction, these three things put together, and then we start bringing your health in, in the natural process.
Dr. Deepak, you've been standing by for a long time, but when you're involved with allopathy, and maybe there are doctors who join and they are skeptics to some extent about all this other stuff. What is the message you would give them, and in education also of our doctors today, that perhaps there is a holistic way and an integrated way of doing medicine?
Thank you for the nice question. It's question of integration of the two sciences.
Yes.
We have seen in the past the age of skepticism, nearly in the 80s and 90s, when I took up my first PhD on meditation research, there was skepticism. It's fine, the skepticism, as long as it's academic, is normal, and this is what. But over the years, the amount of skepticism has reduced. Maybe it's government supported, maybe the good funding is coming in this area, and maybe more evidence of science is coming forth. So I believe more evidence for science is coming forth, and that must be the clenching evidence to somebody to convince skepticism. Skepticism is very good for the science because that's why differentiation, it goes up. So my suggestion to those people who do that, that they should believe that the system, look at the system, like it's Ayurvedic system or allopathic system or any other system. There is a system, there's a well thought philosophy, there's a well thought, well oiled system has been over the years, not only for decades, it's for 1,000 years. Like look at the yoga and Ayurveda. I've been reading the history. Over the 5 years it's been documented, but must have been on earth nearly more than that, which means one should look into the system, look into the science, look at what, and if there is evidence missing, which may be missing in any of the science, it's the duty of the people to come forward and then discuss it out. So if you discuss it out, third where the skepticism goes up, and we have seen this going away. I've been part of the Satyam program of the government of India, and I've seen that how this can be helped by putting two people together, one on allopathy, one on Ayurveda. They can bring to the same platform and then discuss out the plus and negative point of view. The issue is that the Ayurveda yoga focuses more on health and fitness and higher levels of mental, physical and psychological, spiritual well-being. All these components, beautiful tool. If you look at the breathing exercise is another thing. So well thought, the type of flexibility are there. And there's a continuum, there's a disease, they look from a different angle for the same phenomenon. So the moment you bring that, okay, this is what your forte, this is our forte, and then we come together. So by combining the two, it's good that you can convince a person or skeptic goes away. However, I believe the discussion on differing opinions should keep on happening. The country needs more and more data, almost equivalent data of what is there in allopathy or more than data on paper, on table. That requires a lot of effort from all parts of the body, not only state to funding. For example, how many people are doing yoga for 9 years and what is their impact? What is the actual quantum of people doing yoga in any given country? What is the effect on a health system? These are bigger, major questions. Or whosoever is doing the research should deposit that data to a repository and it becomes a mega data. And then on mega data, people can do big data analytics and apply AI tools or machine learning tools. That's what the need for today. And that will take away the skepticism part from any of the people of this side or that side of the world. Second point is that we should not be biased to our own science or our own thought or philosophy. We should agree to disagree, come to the same point and look at the plus point and look at the long-term effect. So that's a more philosophical connotation, but it's very, very important for people to come together. So the philosophy, science and all that, they go together. So philosophy of science, philosophy of yoga, and or having an exact database based on the tools decided by the two people or three people that okay, this is the tool, this is what we want, and that's how we are able to conduct now multi-center trial. And we are conducting trials, one arm being in London and one arm being here at AIIMS, being part of that, and also having 26 or more places, same trial, same protocol is being used. And that's how we bring.
You did mention AI, Dr. Deepak. So, I mean, the concern is AI going to be able to take us through a yoga session in the future? I mean, would that be a possibility, would you think? And would that bring youngsters into the whole process of learning?
Very interesting question. Like, the AI is a tool. Like, computer has been a tool, and in the 80s we have discussed how difficult to bring the computer to the office. 1980-89 we have seen that. So tool is a tool. Now the beauty part is that AI can handle large data, can find out the patterns. Not only this, can find out a pattern within an individual. So if you are looking for individualized or personalized treatment intervention, perhaps the software and a computational tool will come a big way. How to analyze my whole life for last 30 years, 40 years, what my behavior, once they are on a database, once they are there, then you know it, this kind of a person. So that's one way, how to make things personalized. The AI tool or machine learning tool will be in a big way. Second thing, the Delhi city is doing yoga, Mumbai is doing yoga, Calcutta is doing yoga. It's a large data set. Now how this influencing, what are the patterns, which type of people are doing, why people are not doing, all questions can be answered. Now day yoga is fine, one day we come up and this thing, but it should be a habit all the day. Now there should be a simple tool and that tool should tell us that I'm doing yoga or not, and then how to help. For example, we published a paper that why not meditation break instead of coffee break during the office hours. So there is a need for having an office protocol for the yoga. So this 2 minutes, 3 minutes, breathing exercise is a good tool, meditation is a good tool. So that can come. But how to incorporate into a bigger system, AI is the answer.
Right. Ambassador Bhandari, we've seen yoga breaks during the G20 meetings. Do you agree that technology can be leveraged going forward when it comes to making yoga more adaptable for a fast-moving population?
I always go to natural sciences. So
Right.
this, when it comes to the physical body, for physical body, whether it is AI, whether it is modern medical sciences, they are, they have mastery over the physical body. But what is not physical? For example, prana is not physical. Between a dead body and a alive body, the only difference is one has prana, the other doesn't have a prana. The other point, mind is not a physical, entity. Likewise, beyond mind, what is there? So, unfortunately, if we go into this, craziness about technology, the technology can do everything for us, then why was human individual created in the first place? The only reason why human body was, designed the way it has been designed, as compared to all other creatures. There are, as we say in our scriptures, 8.4 million creatures. Out of that, this human body is the most evolved. After all, even the AI is coming from some individual's ingenuity. So therefore, we should remember, if we substitute our normal activities through technology, then what we are seeing, the kind of diseases we are facing today, these are all lifestyle diseases, of which the answer is not in medicine. The answer is in this inner engineering of the invisible components that are in this physical body, which are our activities of our senses, of our mind, what is our intellectual ability, how this brain empowerment, what is called the consciousness, the body consciousness and material world consciousness and the super consciousness about the universe and the creation living in the universe. So I see it that way, and therefore, while technology that is supporting, I think the overall balance of nature with what we call development, it will be very, meaningful. But if we do too much intervention, and we think we can engineer the human body, there I personally feel we will definitely run into a head-on collision, which is actually happening. That's why we see such, young people suffering from sudden cardiac attacks, attacks or strokes or, depression and so on. So,
Yes.
that's where my experience says that the moment I get now such people every day, and we are seeing that just through this basic, the breathing, the prana flow, the thought process, if we can bring little bit alignment, already we see the improvement. And the moment a person shows improvement, he feels positive that it is working for me, especially if he has already spent, lot of resources through modern medicine and is not getting any results. So that's where I think we should not ask every time where is the evidence. These sciences, yoga, Ayurveda, are practical sciences. They were given by the creators who have created this entire, universe and whatever we see in the universe.
Right. Dr. Deepak, obviously when we carry the message of yoga across the world, you would require to have the scientific evidence to make people more convinced. But also perhaps you would need to have, the message and the language of the people, because maybe, I mean, some of the skeptics come from countries where, you know, they are a little confused about the Sanskritization, in a sense, of yoga, which is basically the root of all of yoga. All the words come from Sanskrit. So, I mean, maybe difficult for them to understand. In what way do you think this can be sorted out?
Very good question. Like we have problem for language. It has been with the Greek, it has been with the German, British also. So the moment you bring the science to the platform, an equivalent word of should be sought and comfortable. Like it's not that you have to pronounce that word only. The meaning has come from Sanskrit, and before Sanskrit some other language might have been there. So therefore the equivalence should come up. However, once you go to a system and philosophy, anybody can understand how the breathing takes place. For breathing you are using pranayama, but you can use some other terms that people do use, and we face this whenever we are submitting a proposal and then we use the exact word, people do not understand. Perfect. However, equivalence word written in the bracket in some other language or simple language would do this thing, and this has happened even a science. When we are doing science, when you teach science in Hindi or in Japanese or Chinese, we have seen that the equivalence word is available. So being bilingual should not be a problem. So the yoga terms also becomes bilingual, and two terms I think this should perfectly acceptable, and that's how I should go. That the dictionary of all Sanskrit yoga philosophy, they are already available, need to be put little more. Earlier we have struggled with the Greek words or Italian words.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
We have gone through that phase of like alpha, beta, then numbering systems. We know that different numbering system. We know the alphabet, but we have been comfortable. So human mind is enormous potential. We have enormous potential.
Okay, very quickly, now the closing comments really from the two guests. Ambassador Bhandari, do you think that an event like what happened at the UN headquarters this morning in New York will lead to greater mindfulness and awakening and awareness in the younger generation, and in nationalities that may not have had yoga maybe more than a decade back, so who are new basically to the concept of yoga? So is this going to lead to a greater mindfulness and awakening, which is really India's idea, to spread it as much as possible to different parts of the world?
Yeah, definitely. I think this event in UN headquarters, the kind of media publicity it has generated, obviously this is a very high end actually promotion of yoga science. I want to emphasize this point, that we should always now present yoga and Ayurveda together, because they are complementary and they are our Vedic sciences, and therefore the results when they can give. So I, for example, I am being invited in different countries, in different scientific organizations. Like just 2 weeks back, I was in Berlin in an osteopathy conference where they wanted to understand the yoga intervention and the Marma Chikitsa intervention, and they were so open to everything, especially the medical professionals, when they see the science behind it. So we are not presenting a philosophy. This is the science of this body and beyond this body, in the sense inside, especially the person in this body. So I always, this yoga between the person in the body and the physical body as the house of this person living in this body. So when we bring these two together and how this is functioning, this is called the individual universe. So what is called Brahman, the universe, and each individual is a universe in himself or herself. So when we start, presenting these sciences as universal, as civilizational, it is for the humanity as a whole. Obviously, I have in my own, experience, whether it was in United Arab Emirates as back as 2005 to 2007, or in Christian countries, I found they had no difficulty so long as we were talking about the science of yoga and how it is happening with the individual. So I see really yoga as a major component that can unite the world community together. Parallelly, the developmental aspect can go, but the humanities interface yoga can bring together them.
Absolutely. We'll leave it at that, Professor Deepak and Ambassador Bhandari. Thank you so much for your views on this special broadcast on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the United States of America. It was indeed a message of unity, health and wellness that went out from the UN headquarters. The Prime Minister led the 9th International Yoga Day celebrations. An Indian exercise, or the exercise which was international in nature, led by the Indian Prime Minister, has also created a Guinness World Record for the maximum number of personalities from nationalities that participated in the yoga session. Thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you very much for watching, and we continue to give you all that we have from the Prime Minister's historic visit to the United States, a milestone visit in many senses. It is a state visit, but it has begun with a world record in terms of yoga.
Absolutely, and the visit has just started with the New York leg and the yoga session. There will be many more meetings in the next few hours in New York, and the Prime Minister will be going to Washington DC in the second and final leg of his visit to the United States before he leaves for Egypt. And Amritpal Singh, my colleague, will be taking you forward on this rolling comprehensive coverage of Prime Minister's visit to the United States of America. So stay tuned to DD India for everything you want to know about the visit.